Hi everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Skate Ukraine Academy. Today we're talking about abusive and positive coaching. As soon as we started Skate Ukraine Academy, Skate Ukraine, I started to receive a lot of feedback, including negative feedback, basically about that coaching. Abusive coaching is needed to produce champions, and I feel like we have to start discussion on all this on the topic, and I couldn't think about better guest to have this conversation as than Kiira Korpi. Kiira Korpi is a five-time national champion, Finnish champion, three-time European medalist, and many time medalist and champion of other Grand Prix events and a lot of other competitions. And recently, she has been advocating for conscious coaching. She studies positive psychology and positive coaching in University of New York. And without further ado, let's welcome her, Kiira Korpi. And I want to start with first with introduction. Like tell us the story, like quickly, the story of why and how you started to represent skaters and talk about culture in sports in general.
Well, thank you for having me, Ivan. I think what you're doing is so important for our sport. And the way I came to be an advocate for these issues was about 5 years ago. I stopped competing, and then I did a lot of inner reflection and got some perspective out of skating. And then 2 years ago, I published my memoir from my life and from my skating career. And then after that, I think the advocacy work kind of organically began because I noticed that I haven't been alone with my experiences in skating with some of the, dysfunctional issues like negative coaching or eating disorders and all these like cultural things that are happening in skating. So after the book, I got so many messages from people and skaters saying to me that, oh my God, it was like reading my own thoughts or my own life or career. And then I noticed like, wow, now I can use this platform that I have to really help skating to evolve to a new level, to a more conscious and maybe more holistic and humane direction.
Right. So that's interesting. Your book, so the book it has kickstarted this interest to advocacy, right? Right.
Yes, so the book served as a catalyst for a more public conversation around these issues, at least in Finland, and I mean there was a lot of pushback too, like no, this is like Kiira is just like extra sensitive or whatever, like she doesn't know what she's talking about, like people shouldn't make any um, people shouldn't draw any conclusions about the culture. And I wasn't, when I was writing the book, I wasn't quite sure. It was really about my personal journey, but then through the book and the feedback and now working with a lot of people, I know that it's these issues are cultural and so insidious in the culture, the way, for example, coaching has um, evolved over the years in a way that the kind of authoritarian style is viewed as normal or even good for the athletes.
Right. So that's what I want to focus us to discuss today is the positive coaching. Actually, the name of the video would be Positive Coaching 101 or something like that. And yeah, but
Yeah.
before we get to the positive coaching itself, let's linger a little bit on what's wrong with the coaching model that an environment, I would say, not just model, that was in your environment.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to say that there is a lot of right also in the coaching culture in skating, and I want to acknowledge that. And maybe we will go to that later. But yeah, I feel like things that we could definitely improve on, and some things that are harmful for the holistic well-being of the athletes and the coaches and people in general. And those are just things that many skaters like myself, when I was competing, I didn't even realize that these are somehow wrong. I just You just grow up to take them as normal. For example, the way the coach can use power over you, can be like yelling or shouting or name calling or ignoring or making you the scapegoat or isolating or these kind of things that now we know that are actually part of emotional abuse, which, for example, for me, when I was competing and skating, it wasn't even in the vocabulary. I mean, it's also a scientific topic that has been researched just I don't know, 10 years or something like that, so very new topic. But yeah, and just the physical aspect of the coaching too, that it's kind of normal that the skaters, the athletes are training even if they are sometimes quite severely injured, or that they have to go to compete even if they are injured. And that's just also something that you just take it as it is, or the fact that then some coaches can almost like blame the athlete if they get injured, not to self-reflect what's been wrong with the coaching that the athletes get injured. So, but I think the overall philosophy has been this kind of um, a thing that the coach is an authoritarian figure that produces the athlete, and the athlete is more like a product that needs to be shaped and molded, and it's the coach's intelligence that creates the perfect product. And what we see now in the new coaching style, which is more athlete centered and human centered, is that the athlete has much more autonomy and intelligence themselves to kind of build up their own product, or to be more in charge of their own career and their own thoughts and emotions, and not so codependent on the coach or someone else. So I guess that's the kind of overall picture.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I like that you mentioned the new style of coaching, then, and you mentioned also that this whole topic of positive coaching is relatively new field, and I think it's important to talk about because I mean, in a way, we see this division in old generation in and new generation, but I would use those words very sparingly because all generation doesn't mean that it's like bad. And as you said,
Yes.
there were a lot of good and right,
Yes.
right. So as I understand, the problem is that the environment even accepts, and not just accepts but tolerates some forms of abuse in sports. So
Yes.
it doesn't mean that abuse happens all the time to everyone, right? But it happens and it's tolerated.
Yes, because in many places it is seen as the best viable coaching method. Uh, it's not that people or coaches consciously think like, let me just like abuse
Right.
these athletes. No, that doesn't usually happen. It's just the way people have been coached by like themselves earlier in their career, or even how the federation or someone else puts like pressure on them to just squeeze out everything from the athletes, no matter how short the career of the athlete ends up to be, or how many athletes needs to break in order to produce this one person or one athlete who kind of uh, makes the cut or can like endure all this. But what really strikes me about many of these things, not just in figure skating but in many other sports, is that why wouldn't the best coaches in the world want to look at the recent science behind performance psychology or even just like performance, what makes the athlete empowered to do their best and be physically well and to be able to have a sustainable career. uh, and this goes with all like nutrition and all these things that would need to have, I think, much more science based um, view or philosophy in order to have a sustainable sports environment. And and most of all, I think it would be nice if the athletes were, when they stop competing or skating, that they would be more full, more empowered to start their lives and to embark on this journey. And because skating and all the sports, they can teach so much more than just about the sport and the skating. But what happens now, what I see, what really breaks my heart is that many times, so many skaters that we never hear about, they have to stop because they just couldn't take it mentally or physically or emotionally. And I think in that case we should look more closely that what is it in the coaching that makes it almost impossible for many athletes to thrive.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. And the last thing that you mentioned, it's I think it's called survivorship bias, is when you see champions who and abusive coaches, and you build the relation like abusive coaching equals champions, but you don't see those who are not champions, who left sport, who dropped out from sport, who are
Yes.
injured for life because of that, right? So it's important moment.
Yes, yes, yeah, because maybe they don't get the publicity because they don't have the big medals or
Yeah.
the names. But sometimes, even if they want to, I know some cases that the athletes would have actually liked to speak up, but then um, they were just ignored.
um, it's sort of network effect when you have this coaching model dominant. It
Mm,
creates an environment which filters out people who disagree with this model or with these approaches, and welcomes people who is the opposite, who kind of embrace it. And that's what we talk, that's what we call culture, right?
yes.
So yeah, there are a lot of people who disagree with that, but they just don't accept it there.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know in some countries there are coaches who have a very athlete centered philosophy, but they are not supported by the federation. The skaters that they have are kind of, the federation wants to take them and give them to some other coaches that in the past have produced medals, but maybe with some questionable methods. And then I know many coaches also, which makes me really sad, is that the young coaches who would really love to coach like according to their values and maybe in this more humane way, they just burn out in the system and don't see that they have a place in the system because it, like you said, it kind of encourages this kind of more harsh way of coaching.
Exactly. Like I'm kind of happy to hear that from other people, because it shows that the problem is universal. It's not just in Ukraine or other
Yeah.
one country, because
Yes.
I see this very clearly. I see the new generation of young coaches who first they remember methods that were used on them, and
Yeah.
they just refuse to use them. They
Yes.
just like they say we don't know how, but we're going to look for better ways. Like
Yes.
we just don't accept that it's the only option.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because they can feel in their bones that it wasn't the best way. And what, again, science points out, the research points out that emotional abuse in no way is the best way to make the athlete perform in the best way. So that's one of the myths that I would like to break in the skating world, that it's somehow needed, that you have to break the athlete in order to get the medals. And many people have asked me, like, well, you probably wouldn't have achieved this or that medal if it wasn't so like harsh and tough and even abusive at times. And in the beginning I was like, yeah, that's true, like probably. But now I'm like, well, I actually would like to ask a question, like, how much more could I have succeeded if it was done a little bit in a more sustainable way, and really yeah, in a way that I could be psychologically free, and the motivation would be the inner motivation more than the outer motivation or pressure.
Right, right. Yeah, that's, I feel, the biggest drawback of this traditional coaching. Like, I mean, from the moral perspective, it's obviously like wrong, right?
Yes.
But also, I feel like it it like you mentioned at the beginning, that there is authoritarian model of coach that mold, like, creates skaters. It's like almost a factory, right?
Yeah.
When you work with metal or with stuff. But we're talking about human beings, and every person is unique, and they have their own strength and weaknesses. And I mean, it's really like, if you think about, coach is probably one of the hardest jobs in the world.
Yes.
You work with humans, and you have to know how humans works. And so you keep mentioning scientific research, because you probably studying this right
Yes.
now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've been trying to read a lot.
Yeah, and like, scientific research is the ground truth for everything, for books, for articles you read, for knowledge that's spread later on. But I don't know many figure skating coaches who read scientific papers. It's just not what coaches do usually.
Yes, and I think that that's been also researched, that why emotional abuse is so prevalent in the coaching circles is that the coaches tend no tend to the coaches usually value the mentorship or the example of the older, more successful coaches than the formal coaching education, where they would actually get the latest research and stuff like that. But yeah, then it kind of creates this cycle until there are enough people like you and me, and probably most people that are watching this, that are kind of waking up and saying, like, no, this just can't go on anymore, and there is a better way. And that's what, yeah, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. And I mean, from what I've seen, again, in Ukraine, formal coaching education is just formal. It's just to get the document that allows you to go and work as a coach. But methods that you employ as a coach, they usually just copy paste from the methods how you've been taught and coached.
Yes.
So yeah, it just goes in a cycle and create this feedback loop, because like, that's the method, the only method you know. And the only method and you will pass this method to next generation, right? So but again, what we can offer, like, people who don't want to continue this cycle, right?
Mhm.
Who want to break this cycle, like, we want to offer them something else. And as you said, there is a research that, in which field, which I think it's called positive psychology, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, well, I'm sure there are many fields that offer some kind of solution, but but yeah, I've been studying positive psychology myself, and the idea in that is that we look for things that are right more than wrong, because our brain, through the evolution, it's so programmed to look for things that are wrong and the mistakes. And especially in a competitive environment like skating, you really, really, really have to work hard in order to not only see what's wrong and what mistakes and everything. You have to train your mind, your brain, to see the good in the skaters and in yourself as a coach too. It's important to recognize your strengths and your values, and then kind of provide the space for the athlete to grow into their full potential in their own unique way. And I don't know, I got this like metaphor in my mind that whereas before, or maybe still in some places, the coach is the one who's kind of, like you said, is the one who makes the stones. What did you say, metal man, or how do you call them?
Yeah, like in
Yeah,
factory, you just molding
yeah,
stuff,
factory.
right?
You mold the different like material, and then I feel like in this new approach, it's the coach is more like a gardener, that like the main job is just to take care of that the temperature is right, the the opportunity and the environment is right, then for the, I don't know, flowers or whatever grows in the garden, for the flower to grow into their own unique expression. So I think that takes a lot of pressure off also from the coaches, because then they don't feel like, oh, I need to like make this athlete. It's the athlete himself who makes himself, and the coach is there more to be the helper and the guide, for the athlete to really tap into their own inner resources and wisdom and strengths and gifts.
Yeah, that's really good point, and it reminds me. There is a book. I think it's written in Russian. Book about learning foreign languages, and the name is something like "You can't be taught to another language." Like, and the point is like it's the kind of wordplay. The point is that you can't be externally taught. Only you can like be motivate yourself and learn yourself. So I'm applying this logic here. It's not like you can take any human being, any kid, and make it, teach them elements or teach them how to be a great skater.
Yeah.
But you can uncover this potential, this boost their inner, performance, their inner motivation, and make it just happen, and then just follow all along this path. So
Yeah.
that's probably the
idea, yes.
essence. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. And then I think it's so exciting what comes out when we allow the athletes to tap into their, or even the coaches, when they tap into their own inner motivation and wisdom and strengths, then the outer expression is unique to everyone. And I think then the definition of success can be also broader, that it's not just this one typical skating type or program type. It can expand and take many different forms, and maybe it's not just how many revolutions you do in the air, although that's great too, but it has so many other components.
Yeah, but that's hard.
Yeah.
If you want to be able to adapt to all those personal uniqueness of each child, I mean, you have to understand how to work with that, right? And it's hard. You have to learn that. You can't just quit sport and get some formal education and then just go coaching, right? It's which is, it's a problem, because I know that it's always not enough coaches. So in Finland, I think, and in Scandinavian countries, there are a lot of volunteers in the coaching
Yes.
positions as
Yeah.
well.
But not so much
Um,
anymore. It's become such a difficult profession, and the expectations are so high that there is actually a big lack of coaches.
right,
Mm.
right. Which leads us again to the topic of positive psychology and the research, and especially coaching psychology. I
Mm.
actually did some prior research, and what I found is that even the term coaching psychology didn't exist until very recently.
Oh,
The,
really?
only in yes, only in 2000, in year 2000, the first classes of coaching psychology has been started in University of Sydney,
Yeah.
and like it's like 20 years ago.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. It's.
What what people did like 40 years ago, how did they plan their coaching strategy, how they were advocating for their actions. Like there is no research, there is no data, there is no, it just whatever you feel right or
Yeah, or I don't think. I think the research was just more focused on the physiology. My dad, my father, was a very great ice hockey coach in the 70s and 80s and even 90s.
right.
He won the Olympic bronze medal with the female ice hockey team for Finland and all these things. And he said that he probably used like what we nowadays would like call emotionally abusive coaching techniques, because those were the ones that were taught at the university, that those are the good things. Like you kind of like in the 30s people still thought that if you are too nice to your kids, if you are a too nice parent, you give too much love, that would kind of spoil the kids. And now we know that corporal punishment and everything is really bad for the kids. But anyway, I feel like the same thing is now going on with this coaching philosophy that we have. With the research, we have come to the conclusion that that this kind of uh, psychologically not so holistic way of coaching can be very detrimental to the health of the athletes and the coach. And my going back to my father, it's been very interesting to talk to him, and he's been like saying like it's such a good job what you are doing now. And he said that I wish when I was younger that we had more education on this psychology, but the focus was only on the like how can we make the athletes work like machines, and just like like test the physiology and just try to focus on the physical aspect, and then not so much on the mental aspect, or at least not in a very like integrative way.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that he supports you. It's
Yes,
I feel like it's very important here.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that knowledge that we had back then, it's probably just empiric knowledge. Like we saw it works, and then we just pass it to the next generations, which is it. It almost always actually this empirical knowledge could be right, but it could be like dead wrong. I
Yeah.
mean, I like the first thing that comes to my mind is the Moneyball book. Maybe you've seen this
Yeah.
movie
Yeah.
with,
Yeah.
yeah, and they had this culture of scouting for decades. It's like hundreds and thousands of people who were absolutely sure that they know how to choose the best players, right?
Mm.
And then came the era of computers. People started analyze numbers, crunching numbers, and they just did like simple calculation, not simple, but
Yeah.
still did crunch the numbers, and they saw that all those people were dead wrong all the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm fascinated by those stories. I'm a huge fan of this data science based approach
Yes,
to
me too.
improve.
And I hope there would be
Yeah.
more tests on that would test the well-being of the athlete. I remember going to the national team camps many times, and there were extensive tests, but only like physiological tests, like how much can you jump, or how many like pull-ups or push-ups you can do, and how fast you can run, and they weigh you and they look at your fat percentage and all these things, which I'm not saying that maybe shouldn't still be there, but I think it could be so much broader, the how we measure the well-being, and then we can see the data, how well the well-being correlates to the performance.
Actually, I remember one study with 300 Olympic athletes who were asked how they, like, it was surveyed basically, how they measure importance of mental training. Basically, how important their mental skills to success.
Yeah.
Being able to concentrate, being able to, I don't know, overcome problems that you have along the path. And they almost all, like 80 or 90%, they scored mental skills more important than physical.
Yeah.
And my question to you, how much time do we, skaters, I mean, spend on training physical part of our, athleticism, right? And how much, like in percentage, can you give me percentage, how much time on trainings you practice mental skills?
Well, I mean, I guess it's all combined. You cannot just like take your mind off when you start doing your program. It's always in like synchronized, but those trainings that would be purely mental, like going to a sports psychologist or a mental, I don't know, training with some other style, I think it's very, very little. Usually it's just when you have a problem, like you need to overcome this like huge fear of competing, or nervousness before competing, or a fear of doing a jump after you maybe experienced a trauma or something like this. So it's being used in that way. But I'm so happy that nowadays you can see more and more mental training incorporated, even without like a huge problem, just to have it as additional support for the athletes. And yeah, that's what I would really like to see growing more, because I mean, it's probably all the best athletes, and I'm sure it's the advice that many skating coaches too give to their students before competing, is just stay in the moment, just stay relaxed, just do one element at a time. And we know that the best performance, whether it's boxing or skating or tennis, it's when the athlete is really in the moment and enough relaxed. And still, I think we could utilize much more mindfulness practices, and really consciously practicing the staying in the moment techniques.
Absolutely. I like this concept, thinking about your mind as the same way as you think about your body. Like we go to shower every day, right? If we have any scar or any injury, even smallest one, we go to, we fixing it, right? We go to the doctor, whatever. With mind, we usually don't do this. We don't have mental hygiene. If we have some mental scar, we just let it go, whatever. And for athletes, I believe it should be 50-50. Like we have to spend as much time on training mental skills as physical skills. And I think Brian Orser did, he made a mobile app that helps athletes to concentrate, practice some, I don't remember what was that, kind of meditational stuff. And but that's
I love seeing yes, it's an exception. And I love seeing the way Brian relates to his skaters, and there is this kind of, at least from the outside it seems, and what I've been working with Brian a few times also, but it's based on this supportive community and environment and freedom for the athlete to choose for themselves, or at least have their opinion heard. So yeah, and what one name that I remember now that we were talking about the mindfulness and meditation is, for example, Phil Jackson, the most decorated NBA coach with I think 11 NBA wins. He used a lot of Zen Buddhism to teach his athletes about meditation, mindfulness, and even Tai Chi sometimes, or something else. And yeah, I think that's one of his secrets why he was so successful for such a long time.
Yeah, actually, I think today, in the moment of when we record this, it's a birthday of Phil Jackson.
Ah,
Um,
okay. Well, happy
yeah,
birthday, Phil, if you're watching this, which I doubt.
yeah, he's very often mentioned as an example of truly smart, qualified, and I mean qualified coach. And that's like back to our discussion of old versus new, abusive versus positive. I would say that this new system that we're talking about, the positive coaching, is more educated coaching, is more qualified coaching, is less chaotic. And yeah, so like I want to kind of shift this perspective from being negative versus positive
Yeah.
towards being uneducated versus educated. And again, I'm not talking about uneducated people. I'm talking about we just knew much less. Like 40
Yeah.
years ago, we just knew much less how human works, right? And we had this a lot of preconceptions and beliefs that now are proven wrong. Yeah, so that's one of the things, like positive. I've heard that. By the way, what do you think about this? I've heard this. Um, Somebody said that positive coaching is just normal coaching, but just you have to smile. You have to smile and praise and just don't be negative. Which is, I mean, it's not what positive coaching about, right?
Yeah, I think the word positive is sometimes misleading because people think it's just like, even positive psychology, some people think it's just like being with the smile all the time. But I think it's
Yeah.
really the opposite. Positive coaching or positive psychology, it allows the whole human experience. It allows and quite like celebrates or tries to welcome all the like I don't know, colors of the emotional palette of for people, so you can experience fear or sadness or anger, and you can be mindful of that, and then you can, you know, process it and let it go, not that it takes you over if you just try to like dissociate it or run away from it. And yeah, but it's a good question that I think that's why these kind of conversations are important, so we get a more expanded view what we mean with positive coaching, that it doesn't mean that everything is great all the time. No, that's not that's not life, that's impossible. But it means that I guess it means that we stay real with whatever we feel internally or what happens externally. We don't try to sugarcoat anything, because yeah, I think that's one of the reasons then why this negative coaching can continue, because people, myself included, people who have been really like in that bubble, we don't even see it as negative or painful, because we have become so good at dissociating from all the pain and like difficult emotions, and we didn't have the space to feel them
Yeah.
safely.
Yeah. But emotions, I mean, it's important thing. Like emotions drive every
Behavior.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically all behavior driven by emotions, right? So it's important to understand what it is, how to work with it. And so what I expect from modern 2020 coach is to be a professional at
Yes.
handling emotions. First of all, own emotions. I
Yes.
mean, like one of the typical examples of emotional abuse, like maybe people don't even see this as abuse because, as you said, you like
Yeah.
just learn to associate it, is yelling at
Yes.
child. When child is not doing what coach want,
Yeah.
they yell. And if you think about it, it's the stupidest thing that you can even imagine. It's like going to another country and go to the restaurant, let's say in France, in Paris, and you you say something to waiter, and he or she doesn't understand you because like they don't know your language, right? And instead of find another way to convey what you want, you just increase the loudness of your voice and repeat the
Yeah.
same, which is obviously stupid way to communicate, right? So the same way I see yelling, of course waiter will try to bring you something to, to satisfy your anger, but it's not coaching, right? It's anti coaching.
Yeah, yeah, that is, I mean, thank you for bringing up that point. It's so crucial. And what I'm really glad about, for example, now in Finland, where emotional abuse has become a very public topic and people have the concept of it and it's in their vocabulary now, and parents can be like uh, more aware of those situations where the skaters are coming crying home from practice and things like that. But we need a lot of like more support for the coaches to build up this kind of emotional mastery, emotional skills, because for some people it doesn't just come naturally. For some it might, but I'm very happy that at least in Finland I'm seeing more and more that kind of coaching incorporated into the coaching program. And yeah, I think that should be the one of the basic things before teaching an Axel, teaching like how to communicate with people and especially children.
Yeah, yeah, it's not just coaches, actually. That's important skill for
For
any
all of us,
human being.
yeah. And I yeah, that's absolutely true. And I hope more and more kindergartens and schools would adopt that, and some do, but I think there are still too much emphasis on like the hardcore, like measurable uh, uh, things to study and
Yeah,
test.
yeah, I agree. It should be the common knowledge, common education for any, I think, for any places where the power imbalance exists.
Yes.
And in when we have coach and athlete, it's like it's already by default you have power imbalance, right? And especially in figure skating, when we have, our like champions peaks at 15 or 16 years, right? So
Even
we
14.
mostly, or 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, rules just don't allow. But so we have kind of child sport in a way,
Yes.
which is, I don't agree with. It shouldn't be like that, but it's a topic for another video.
Yeah.
But here we have two power imbalance factors: is the coach athlete and the age, adult child. So in those environments, when we have this power imbalance, then we have to make whatever we can to make sure that those who have authorities, they know how to work with emotions, right?
Yes. Yeah. I couldn't agree with
Yeah.
you more. Yeah.
I want to also mention, so I think you've seen this video of Natalia Godenko, who Ukrainian world champion in rhythmic gymnastics, and
Yes.
she recently also told her story. And I'm not even sure that in rhythmic gymnastics the situation worse or better or the same, but it's also quite severe. And she mentioned one book that I really want to, I want to give it, I would love to buy this book to any coach I meet in the future,
Yeah.
actually. And that's the book Don't Shoot the Dog by Karen Pryor. It's from 1984, and it's a book from a behavioral biologist who also, like you, she loves scientific research. She like purely based all her claims, all her experience based on scientific research. And it's a book how to train humans, animals, and yourself. And it just gives you the framework to understand how emotion work, how behavior work, how to train behavior, um, what works, what doesn't work. And to me it was mind-blowing book because it opened like the whole new perspective. I just don't understand how people can raise children, or how coaches can work with kids without reading this book, like really.
I have to read it
Yeah.
too. I have to admit I haven't read it, but thank you for offering that, suggestion for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's super practical. It's something that you can start using day-to-day basis very quickly. But I think I'm going to read it more than once. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, let me play a little bit of devil's advocate here. And I ask you a question that I hear a lot. So, why what do you call abusive coaching produces results, and what do you call positive coaching, it doesn't produce, right? And we briefly touched it already, mentioning that there is a network effect and survivorship bias, but I think there is more to that. What do you think?
Yes. Well, I don't think this is completely true, because if we look at success in a very narrow way, like just the Olympic medal of someone who's experienced abusive coaching, it can look like, yeah, great result. But then if we look at the bigger picture and the bigger prize that usually is underneath that medal is a lot, because many kids have to go through that process, and they are broken in the process, and usually even the athlete who achieves the medal is somehow mentally or physically or emotionally or both, they are like severely affected by the abusive coaching. So I think it might look from the outside that it's bringing great results, but I think it can bring just short-term results or not sustainable results. And we have examples from Michael Phelps, who's very vocal here in America. I think he's one of the persons who has won the most Olympic gold medals, but he is advocating that we should be talking so much more about the mental health of athletes. And I know personally many Olympic champions who've said to me, like in a distressed way, that when they won the Olympic medal, it was so sad to notice how empty they felt inside. And you kind of realize that maybe all the sacrifice wasn't completely worth it, because, yeah, it's just the external. And what comes to the positive coaching not bringing good results, I think there is a lot of research and evidence that would point otherwise. I mean, I don't. We've been talking about Brian Orser. I don't know his coaching methods that completely, but it looks like it's producing quite good results with the more positive take on the coaching. And also we talked about Phil Jackson and his way of coaching, and then I have experienced, for example, the coaching and working with Shailene Bourne, the choreographer of the year for ISU, and she just makes all the athletes glow and flourish, and it's so inspiring to work with her and coaches like her. And then there is this rugby team from New Zealand that's main goal is to have the athletes be healthy human beings, and then the second goal is to have athletic success, and they have been the best team in the world for years and years. So So there are examples all over the world that we would like to maybe explore more. And also back home in Finland, we have ice hockey coaches and teams who've done so well without the typical like yelling and like that kind of thing. So yeah, that was a long answer, but I think we need to think about that question in a broader way.
No, that was awesome answer, and like it just warms my heart to hear about those people, and I think we need more publicity to those kind of success cases, because they not just produce, like take Brian Orser, he didn't just produce Olympic medals, right? He creates truly fantastic champions in all senses, like
Yeah.
people who you want to look up, and yeah,
Yes.
I mean,
And I would maybe correct that he doesn't create them, but he creates the space for the athletes to flourish
that's right.
themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But also it in a way it breaks my heart to learn about those, short-term results, because I know a lot of people who actually got medal just one season, and they just had to quit because they have injuries. And
Yeah.
almost all Ukrainian skaters have injuries, like severe injuries, something I wouldn't even imagine myself to deal with. And they just accept it as, because it's sport,
Part of
right?
the
You have
sport.
to.
What kind of injuries do they typically have?
Spine,
Yeah.
knees,
Yes.
yeah, like
And
and
eating
and
disorders
endocrine system.
for sure.
E- e-
Yeah.
Eating disorders is incredibly huge problem even right now, and
And I think those are like they are connected, because if your body doesn't get enough energy, the joints and the bones and everything starts to weaken. And I feel like that was one of the big reasons why I also started to get injured more and more, because the being on the restrictive diet for too long is just your body can't take it. And then we have
yeah,
those worse examples when you have osteoporosis at the age of 30, or you need to go to a, I don't know, hip surgery, or you can't have children if sometimes your hormonal system is too bad for too long. But
yeah,
maybe that's another
and
episode completely, another video.
yeah, absolutely. Like what I
Yeah.
what I hear a lot here is that what did you expect? It's sport, and injuries in sport is, you knew where you go. But I completely disagree with that, because first of all, like one thing that many people don't realize, which is obvious, that healthy athletes perform better.
Yeah. It should be a no-brainer, but it's not.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, and injuries are just a testament of how imperfect our system is. And I'm not talking only about coaching system, but also how we understand human body,
Yeah.
which is again like the only hope here is advances in science. But also, to me, I came not from I had normal background, I had normal childhood, not sport childhood. So to me, sport has always been this, I saw this as an environment that creates champions, that nurture the best in people, that creates like superhumans, and it really breaks my heart seeing how is truly different in the inside. And yeah, that's why I think we should build new culture, more scientifically based, more educated, more holistic, more humane.
Amen. Yeah. Yeah, I think that sounds really good. And I feel like our whole world is in this big change of rethinking how we live and how we work and how we do sports and how we treat children and yeah, it's a very slow and gradual process, and like any cultural change, it takes time before enough people are like courageous enough to start doing things differently, no matter the outside pressure or mocking they might receive because of that. But that's how we change. And I feel like then creating movements like we've seen, well, for example, Me Too movement and the environmental movement. And I, in my bones, I somehow feel that there is a big movement coming also in sports, even bigger than what we've seen now. We've seen a lot of reckoning in USA gymnastics with Larry Nassar scandal, and in Finland we have had our own little, I mean, it wasn't little, but in Finland it was a big scandal in synchronized skating about emotional abuse, and so all these things, but maybe like a more worldwide movement, like a children's rights movement in sports. And what my hope is that the new generation of athletes and youngsters, their consciousness is already different from the start, and they see world differently, and they are so much more connected through social media and other platforms. So my hope is that they also are the ones who then have the power to say that no, I'm not going to take that yelling, that's not okay. And they would have the voice to, you know, stand up for themselves, and they would know their rights and what's okay and what's not.
Yeah, absolutely. That was inspirational, and I hope young coaches who listen to this video, they got some confirmation of their views. And I think, yeah, I think, Kira, you're doing an incredibly important job. Like, you took this new medium, which is internet, and you making this shift in this culture. And yeah, thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you. You are part of that shift, and all of us who, I mean, all of us who are here, or you who are listening to this, we are all part of this change and movement. And I feel like it's just about to start growing in a bigger ways.
Yeah. Awesome. Then let's call it a day. And that was fantastic conversation. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.